In the darkest worlds that ever were, the only thing that brings light are stories. Those stories are kept in one place, the tiny bookcase.
Hello, story seekers. I'm Ben.
I'm Nico, and you're listening to The Tiny Bookcase.
We have an intriguing treat for you, something of a departure.
But not too far. There'll be stories aplenty.
Our guest is a performer and storyteller of found spooky tales.
His voice is rich and his opinions are sharp. We'd like to welcome Tom Kirkbride.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, guys. How are we?
Oh, that is rich.
It's very rich. It's like chocolate cake.
You
Love
get
it.
used to it.
I hope I never do.
You have a YouTube show called Sleepless Readings, do you
I
not?
do.
So do you want to just tell us a bit about it and how you find the stories, what the process is, just so people have like an idea who you are?
Sure. So I read short horror stories every week. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do 2-sentence horror stories, which I get from Reddit. They're literally, as they sound, they're just 2 sentences which make a whole story, and that's it. Little bite-sized midweek fun.
So all of the stories come from Reddit, is that right?
More or less. I
More
get the
or less.
occasional via submitted one, which I'm happy to read through.
Oh, that's really cool.
Oh, we got something to do now, haven't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then Sundays, I read through a longer story, anywhere between like 5 minutes to 20 minutes, half an hour, somewhere in that window. And that's like a
Brilliant.
full-fledged story with like multiple voices and more of a plot than 2 sentences.
So what led you to it? Like, have you done lots of storytelling before or performing?
No, I've done a bit of like amateur theatre before, like a few musicals, plays, but even that's sort of relatively new.
Oh wow, can you sing?
Yeah, pretty
Bloody
well.
hell! But that's amazing. You'll have to do that for us one day. I don't know whether our audio
Ben,
quality is good enough for that, but
a voice that sultry. Do you really think this man can't sing? Come on. Come on.
sultry.
Sultry.
I've been known to drunkenly do some Tom Jones down the pub.
Oh,
Brilliant.
welcome aboard.
Right, well, I think it's time that we get stuck into our own stories. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be doing the classic Nico and I have a story to read. And in the middle, Tom is going to read a story that he has cleared with the person that's written it. And he'll be doing that in the middle. And we'll have a bit of a chat about it. So you're going to be starting, Nico. And the prompt, which is derived from the story that Tom found and cleared with the Redditor, is a cold wind.
A cold wind. Before we'd even started our task, I knew that we were doomed to fail. We'd lost Snorri in the morning. Even inside the keep, the cold had taken him. We found him curled by what had once been the hearth, when we could get wood. I did not have the poor luck to be one of those called to take his body to the walls and throw it clear. Though that luck had come back to bite me now. The teeth of foul misfortune worked at my jugular. We had learned to clear away the bodies of the dead early on. Better to throw them to be destroyed. At least then there was hope for Valhalla. We convinced ourselves of that. But even the promise of that eternal paradise, of the hunting halls of Odin, had not been enough to drive us into the fight. We cowered. Our people had never cowered. The very thought haunted us near as much as the enemy growling at our gates. But not one of us had dared speak out against our leader. But this morning, we'd thrown him from the wall, and Snorri's men were no more. Now, we were just survivors, and desperate ones at that. Ranulf and I had been against opening the portcullis. The Britons were good at little compared to us, but when it came to building defensible halls, they were masters of their craft. We were outvoiced, 3-2. The others wanted to die as heroes. I think, perhaps, Snorri had been the last straw. His red hair marked him as descended from Thor. We'd often joked that his large belly did the same. That had withered in the weeks that passed. He was easy to carry when the time came this morning, even with our own empty bellies. "You two can raise the gate then." That's what they'd said. I didn't have the strength in me to fight against them. Ranulph had reached for his axe, but it wasn't there. We'd burned its wooden handle weeks ago. We'd burned everything that could be burned. I wish we hadn't burned the furs. They'd have been more use now than they were when their smouldering had filled our confined hall with its stink. As soon as we breached the hall, we could hear them. Their cries were carried on that accursed breeze. It is cold where we're from. The snows fall deep, and we wade through them with not a care. I've stood on the prow of a ship, my beard filled with salt and rain, and cared not at all. But this wind cuts with such ferocity that it would flens me to the bone. We'd cursed it when first it came, and called it dark magic. At the time we'd said it with a joke on our lips. Now, we knew we'd been right all along. Ranulph looked awful in the light outside, which was the sun, though I could not have told you but for the sky's colour. No stars, so it must be the day. Nothing to navigate by. Nothing you can trust at all in this foreign land with its curse. We didn't talk on our long walk along the castle's perimeter, but the cries became louder as we approached the gate. It had been some time since I looked upon the monsters, yet I'm not ready to do so again. Ranulph looked at the sky, and I knew he felt the same. But we were so close, and I looked anyway. The same way you spit a retort at your father because you've learned how to wield a weapon, even though some part of you knows full well he will defeat you every time. Until he's old. By then you will have learned respect for him. So you spit that insult recklessly and take the beating that comes with it, because you make your own mistakes on your own terms. So I make my own mistake, and I look. And they're just as I remember them. They look drowned. I've seen many drowned men. Some of them I drowned myself. Their eyes roll back, in a way, as if they're looking for the surface above. It leaves only the white. Their flesh sallows, and they become limp and bloated. They have all of these qualities, driven on by their wind that threatens with every gust to rupture my cheeks. I look upon the dead, and one by one they look up at me. Their wails and howls are carried to me by their chill blast. I want to tear my eyes away before I can memorize all of it. But the red hair stops me. I see Snorri, fiercest of warriors, stood among them, screeching a terrible wail. Too late then. We must have been too late. Or maybe they've learned to wait, to increase their number. Once that wind gets to them, there's no stopping them. They take back their feet, snatched away by death. Even hell would be better than this. Ranulph releases bile and I hear it splatter against the stone. The tears freezing on my cheeks are agony. But I thank the All-Father for them, because I'm alive. I place a hand on Ranulph and I feel him start, jerked from his silent reverie. We move to our posts, on either side of the great iron gate. A show of wealth and strength that's kept us alive for so long. It's to be relieved of its duty. It would have been quick work before. We would have pulled hand over hand and raised the gates. Now it's labour beyond our means. I call to Ranulph. I have a little strength left. It could be put to good use. Hand over hand, brother. This is our battle now. Victory is raising that gate. Then we await Valhalla. I see my words crash on him. A flicker of a flame's ember in this abyssal cold. He redoubles his effort, and somehow I do the same. My fingers are turning black, burning as they touch the great handles to turn the wheel. My palms bleed freely. All the skin I had is gone, torn away by the bite of cold iron. It finally thuds its resounding call. The cries of the enemy are on all sides now. They're through the gates. Our brothers below move to meet them, I'm sure. Ranulph, draw your weapon. I challenge you to a duel. He looks dead already. His lips are splitting and bleeding freely. He has no axe. I doubt he could use a knife if he had one of them either. Ranulph, raise your hands. Hands and fight me. His hands come up defiantly. And that is enough. Our contract with Valhalla is upheld. I stave his head in against the cold stone floor. He fights back feebly. That is enough. Enough for Odin. Enough for the Valkyrie to be dispatched and take him to the great feast. I bid him farewell and watch his blood freeze on the stone. They've reached the top of the walls now, and their eyes turn to me, and I feel the accursed wind slicing at my digits, though I cannot move them in response. I stand, and with what must be my last breath, I bellow a battle cry. The hot mist of it defiance in the face of their eternal cold. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I'll see you in the feasting hall, Snorri. Pour me an ale. I'm coming.
What a time.
Wow, that was immersive.
Really immersive,
Felt
yeah.
like I was there.
I totally agree. It felt very, very cold, and yeah, I thought you nailed it. I thought it was really good fun.
Yeah,
L-
seriously.
Love the Viking Walking Dead thing. That's
Yeah, it was a nice angle.
that's a cool. I like zombie Vikings is cool.
It came from a weird place, you know.
Hmm.
So I read the prompt, and I you know when you look at it for too long, it became the cold wind, and that's where the idea of raising the portcullis came from. And then I worked backwards, and figured out where the cold wind would come in. So I had a bit of a journey on that one.
Fair enough. It's creative.
Fascinating.
I admire it. I'm not a writer myself. I'm more of an actor, but wow, it's interesting to hear the process behind it.
It's that whole like butting your head against the prompt a little bit is it's almost a big. It's like 30% of the fun, I think, of what we do.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's just you can end up with a whole bunch of different routes that you could take, and then one just seizes you, and you're like, oh, it's that one. Okay, let's do that one. And you could really feel that in that, like you had a lot of passion for it.
Yeah.
And it was a nice. It was, I think, for me, it got really exciting when it wasn't like just Vikings or just zombies. Like, you know, it was the two together that really worked for it. Really, there.
Yeah.
But then in your classic style, there were also a couple of like really nice turns of phrase, which the one that really got me because as Tom, you really nailed it by saying immersive. Like I felt exactly the same way because when you said their eyes rolled back looking for the surface in the drowned people,
Yeah.
like what drowned people look like, I could just totally see it. And it's a really horrible mental image to have so vividly placed at the forefront of your mind. So
My
nice work.
apologies.
Yes.
I don't mean it, listeners.
Yes. Were they in Wales out of interest?
I don't know where they were, apart from in the UK somewhere. But Wales definitely works, doesn't it?
Well,
I
the
could
reason
see it.
the reason I thought it was that is because you said the Britons knew how to build.
Yeah.
And I think Saxons, I think Vikings would have only referred to like the Welsh as Britons, and because
Okay.
everybody else would have been Saxon by that stage, in the 8th and 9th century. And 10th
Then
century.
yes, I meant that, and I meant that they were in Wales.
My guy.
But it was cool because it gave me a real sense of place when you use that. I was like, okay, I can see the surroundings now.
I think that definitely suits that sort of rolling hills, icy cold wind thing, doesn't it?
Yeah,
as well.
for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely. I was going to say one phrase I wrote down because I knew I'd forget it, but it was something about I wanted to tear my eyes away before I could memorize all of it. That stuck out to me. That was well written. I don't know. I knew exactly what you meant by that. It wasn't gratuitous, but it was descriptive enough. It was good. I don't know.
it's a really juicy phrase, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a very honest turn of phrase, just a very human thing.
Yeah, well, I knew exactly how that would feel. You know, I could really empathize with the character. Though.
You get a lot in stories of it was burned into my mind, etched into my memory. But I think that I just kind of said it without any lace and fancies, and I think that worked in its favor.
It
Be right
seemed
back,
more
editing.
honest. Oh.
Oh no.
No, sorry, Tom. I cut over you.
Yeah, no bother.
What did you say?
Another part that grabbed me is how you'll always beat your father how your father will always beat you in a fight until he's old, but then you'll have gained respect for him. I thought that was beautiful. You phrased it a lot nicer than that. I'm paraphrasing and butchering it, but
No, feel free.
That stuck out at me.
Butcher away. That really brought across the warrior culture that your man comes from, and explain, and it gives fuel to the fire as to why he makes the decisions that he does at the end of the story. I thought the whole Valhalla thread, pretty much from right at the start, threads really neatly through it. I thought it was well told.
Yeah.
And very as Tom said, immersive.
I did actually toy with making them Scots at one point, but without the Valhalla element, the story didn't work as well. Okay. So after I'd written it, I was reading back through it, and I thought, oh, maybe this would be quite cool if they were Scots, and this was kind of a metaphor for the English or whatever. And it just without that through line, it didn't have the same weight. The reason to be defiant at the end isn't really there anymore.
That makes sense.
It'd be fascinating. It would only work in a much longer piece, of course, but if that was an angle that you wanted to include, it might be interesting to see the like Saxons, Scots, and Vikings all hold up in the same castle during this
Yeah.
event. And then like the Vikings want to open the gate because then they can get to Valhalla, but everybody else is like, fuck that.
No, open the gate. Send the English out.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll open the gate so that you can fuck off and we can have the resources. Does that sound about right? Yeah, you could, but that would require lots of other characters and many thousands more words to properly execute. So
I mean, there were 6 characters in this. I only named 2 of them. I can't add any more now.
oh, it was really good. I enjoyed it, and a good start to the episode.
Absolutely.
So now we've got Tom. Tom is going to be reading a story out that is a found story. So whereabouts did you find this story?
On the No Sleep subreddit, where I source most of my stories.
Excellent.
Who's your Redditor?
Indeed.
It's written by someone named Requiem for Nocturne. I believe it's their first story, at least on this account.
Yeah, Requiem for Nocturne. Well, I hope you're listening.
I thought you were going to say the name
Are you
again.
waiting for an answer?
No, yeah, I'm waiting for them to tweet at us.
Okay. We'll just hold off on the story then.
So, how about that weather, huh?
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So when you're ready, Tom, let's have Requiem for Nocturne's first story from the No Sleep subreddit.
Okay, this is a story called Rain, Rain, Go Away. When I was a kid, I lived in a small town, and like most small towns, there were stories. I could vaguely describe some of them, and no doubt you'd recognize many of them from your own towns. Most of the time, these stories were told, and many people, myself included, blew them off as flights of fancy, conspiracy theory, or the result of a paranoid mind. Until you see them for yourself. In my town, there was a legend that came to be something parents told their children to get them to behave. This was the legend of the Rain Man. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Oh no, not another Slender Man story. I really wish I could say the same thing after what I saw that night. I was around 9 or 10 at the time. My family, mom and grandmother, lived in a rented house in a community of older people. There were very few children my age around, so a lot of the time I would go out and explore my surroundings alone. Unlike a great deal of stories that I've read in the past, I didn't live in a place where there was a huge forest behind my house and things came out of it. No, I lived in what was essentially the middle of town. Each house was no more than 30 feet from one another. However, the street I lived on did have a large power station at the end, and behind that was a huge field that led to our town's flood wall on the banks of a pretty good-sized river with a train trestle spanning it. It was in this area I saw it. I remember that night vividly. I'd set a trap over by the trestle hoping to catch myself a rabbit. What I was going to do with one when I caught it, I hadn't thought that far ahead. It was early September, around Labor Day, because I had a 3-day weekend from school at that point, so I could stay out much later than I normally would otherwise. It was just getting dark when I made my trek through that big field and up to the top of the flood wall. I was not in that great of a shape, so I had stopped to catch my breath. I was bent over, my hands on my knees, and I was taking deep breaths when the wind blew. It was a cold wind that really did not match the surrounding temperature, but it wasn't the temperature that caught my attention, though. It was the light sound of what, even now, I can only describe as crystal wind chimes. I stood up and held my breath, straining my ears to hear it again, but for long moments I couldn't hear anything. Nothing at all. It seemed like everything had fallen mute, lending the deepening darkness an eerie quality. I should have gotten the hell out of there right then and there, but I was an adventurous kid and I was gonna get a rabbit. Self-preservation was not a high priority to me at the time. Despite the ominous feeling that was screaming at me to run away, I pressed on, taking careful steps down the far side of the flood wall to the small paved path that curved around under the trestle. There were thick trees to my left blocking my view of the river and lending the little path an almost claustrophobic feel in the dark. As soon as I stepped onto the path, another wind blew again, carrying with it the soft tinkle of the crystal chimes. Again I stopped and stood there, straining my ears to hear that sound again, but again there was nothing at all. I remember thinking to myself, what the actual hell? I stuffed my hands in my pockets and took a few more steps down the path. I was moving slower now, my sense of danger making my steps rather hesitant. But onward I pushed. I came around the curve in the path where the trees opened up, and I could see the river illuminated by the rising moon. But the river wasn't all I saw that night. There, standing directly under the trestle in the middle of the river, on top of the water, was, thinking back on it now, what I saw there, even I find it hard to believe. It seemed to be vaguely human-shaped, yet inhumanly tall. It wore, or its body was made up of, from my vantage point, what looked like gray, dirty rags. Its arms were spread out to its side, seemingly feeling the air with fingers that looked more like bone-white claws. However, it was its head that caught my breath in my throat. The head was surrounded by what looked like flowing clouds rolling slightly in a wind that touched nothing but the thing in front of me. And through those clouds, its face. My God, its face I will never forget. It was emotionless, like that of a mannequin, and as sickly white as the belly of a fish. It had no eyes, only black holes that seemed to be staring not at me, but through me. It was then I involuntarily gasped and its head snapped, really seeing me now. Again, the sound of the tinkling crystal, so much louder this time, rang out. I was paralyzed. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. I wanted to be anywhere but right there, right then. But I was stuck. The thing then started to move towards me, not so much walking on the water's surface as gliding above it, as the water below was not disturbed. It was at about 30 paces from me when I began to hear it. A childlike voice that seemed to be all around me, saying over and over again, "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day." Its claw-like hand reached out towards me once more. "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day." As it reached in my direction, my paralyzation ceased, and I didn't waste any time. I turned and ran as hard as I have ever ran in my life, yet still the incantation, "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day," chased me up the path, over the flood wall, and into the field. I could feel that thing chasing me, whether it was or not. I don't know. I didn't dare look behind me. I just ran all the way home, slamming the door behind me. For a long time after that, years, I was afraid to leave my house alone, and I always slept with my lights on. Even now, 30 years since that day, my heart starts to pound, and I almost have a panic attack when I hear, "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day," because I know that the Rain Man will indeed come again.
Fuck, man, what performance!
That was fucking ace.
Oh, dude, I could
Yes,
listen
yes.
to you tell stories all day. You should
I
definitely
mean-
be doing audiobooks as well as your Sleepless Readings YouTube show.
I was about to say, Ben, you are in luck because this man has a YouTube channel where he does
Exactly.
exactly that.
3 times a week, baby.
I love it, but like, it's fantastic, and I've really liked what I've heard of it so far. But I could really imagine somebody getting so invested in characters because you're reading them in an
Oh,
audiobook format.
thank
You know that because they're like 20, 30 hours long
Oh, yeah.
audiobooks typically. And you can really get connected to a narrator if they nail it in the way that you're nailing it. But that performance was fantastic, man.
Oh, thank you.
Loved it.
I mean, it got dark during it, and I really want to get up and put my light on now. I didn't notice it
timed it
getting
better.
dark, but now I'm freaked out by it.
Well, it's horror. I mean, that's the desired effect.
I found the use of wind chimes. I didn't know that it could be used. You know, like there's lots of like horror tropes about like creaking doors and
Oh, yeah.
like thunder clapping, you know, this kind of thing. But I didn't really know that wind chimes could be used in that way.
Yeah, it's almost a shame I'm using the story here, because on the channel I would add the sound effects, like you would hear distant wind chimes, or perhaps you would hear the wind blowing in the distance. So I don't get too overboard with it because it'd take forever. But the occasional
Yeah.
ones just to
Also-
add a bit of immersion.
Perhaps too much of it would
Oh, it
not
can
work.
be distracting.
But sure, but like, yeah, I could definitely see that working for that story in particular. I think this Redditor Requiem for Nocturne that's written this has done a really good job with this story.
Yeah, I would agree.
I-
It really
I-
grabbed me.
I thought it was great. I'm not particularly experienced particularly much with this subreddit or this style of story.
Sure.
But I really dug it. I thought it was very good. I thought it was very well told. There was like a conversational style to the storytelling,
Yes.
which you know how like somebody in a conversation can go on like tangents and then weave it back to their original point and this kind of thing.
Sure.
This person has managed to completely master that that style, whilst also allowing everything that is said to build the tone of the story.
I would agree.
I don't think anything was misused or anything like that.
That lends itself brilliantly as well then to narration.
Mhm.
At the opposite end to you, Ben, I'm a big fan of r/no sleep,
Right.
and that format of horror, and they work brilliantly as spoken word pieces, and especially when you've got a voice like young Tom here,
Oh,
it works particularly well. The only thing I'd say about it is, at first I was worried when it was called Rain Man,
rain,
and I was
rain,
like,
go away.
no, the creature
Oh, right,
itself.
okay, sorry.
It said, till I saw the Rain Man, and I thought, Dustin Hoffman, nice. It's not seen him in anything for a while. But the fact that by the time we got to the creature itself, I had completely forgotten about 5 cameras, definitely 5 cameras,
Oh,
and was just worried about its face as pale as the belly of a fish. was excellent work. Excellent use of praise.
It was sickly wide as the belly of a fish, I think, and that really gave me this idea of
no, it was sickly white.
sickly white. Oh right, I thought it was the mouth, and that was like the fish had been gutted, and it had.
Oh.
Oh well, anyway,
Way worse.
I misheard it, but I thought that was a really good bit of description. I actually wrote that down, so I hardcore misheard that one. And then, but the actual description of the Rain Man with this like really strange thing of like clouds around his head. Very strange, very unnerving, unsettling monster in a unnerving, unsettling story.
Yeah, I would agree. I liked the descriptions there. It's not too over the top, but it paints enough of a picture. I don't know. I always like I like it when people leave it blank, like leave it open to interpretation rather, not blank.
Just enough to
tease your
begin the
interest,
image in your
pique
mind.
your
And,
interest
yeah,
a little, but then you
exactly,
fill it in. It's like on my channel, like whenever I read stories, I always leave the thumbnails vague. I just put an image in related to the story, but not Like I did one about a clown years back, and I just had like a colorful bow tie rather than a scary clown. The story was about
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
scary clown, but if I put a picture of a scary clown, then that's determined that's what the scary clown looks like. Whereas if you imagine a scary
It's
clown yourself, it's going to be more scary to you because it'll be personalized.
yeah,
Agreed.
it's amazing what the human mind can do when left to its own
Oh, yeah.
devices.
So we know that you sourced them from this subreddit, and you've obviously cleared the use of this story with Requiem for Nocturne. It's rather fascinating, I think, the way that your YouTube channel operates.
How
And
so?
well, I think going out to, because a lot of these people, I assume, contributors to a Reddit thread, they're not necessarily thinking that this is going to be performed at any
Oh,
stage.
no.
So it's so as Nico just said, the that kind of conversational tone lends itself well to the spoken word format. So it feels very much like you found a way to really add to without detracting anything from the original post, the original story. It's really interesting. Do you get many people knocking you back at all, saying no, refusing your request?
Not really, no. Most people are quite happy to be involved. Like, a lot of them are like, oh, thank you. You think my story's good enough to be narrated? It's like, yeah, please go ahead. You get a few
Brilliant.
who are more, I'd say, professional authors who sometimes ask for payment, which I am not in a position where I could pay for the stories because I release, at least one a week of the long ones, and I don't make any money from it. So,
Sure.
but I mean, even then, they're normally polite about it. They're never like terrible.
Brilliant. Well, it sounds like it's a good community, and you're doing something really cool with it.
Yeah, I'd say the worst is when people just don't check their inbox. Well, I've got some messages that are over a year old that because there's no read receipts on.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So you don't know if they've seen it and ignored it or if it's been delivered even. It's just, it's sent.
You hear that, Redditors? Answer your fucking
Yeah, check your
messages.
inbox once in a while, why don't you?
Name and shame them. Do it all. Or list them now, immediately.
I don't have a list
Oh
in
man,
hand.
stunning stuff. And I would just like to just say again before we move on, but the fantastic narration, man.
Oh, thank you. That was
and-
nervous performance for you guys. Normally I can edit it down
Really?
and
Oh,
never
I
really
think
done a
it-
live reading, so to speak.
you gripped me for sure.
No. Also, in the recording process for the channel, I'd normally record each character as a separate file. As in, I'd do all the lines for the narration track, then I'd do all of Stacy's lines, then all of Jeff's lines, and because switching
Sure.
between voices back and forth, I tend to not keep it as consistent.
Right.
And especially for characters in
Yeah.
the start of a story and then doesn't come back until the end, I'm like, how did they sound again? I go
Do you have a
back, it sounds
particular method for marking up a script as well?
I just read
Or do you
them
just
as
read it
is,
flat?
pretty much.
As is.
Recently,
Right.
I've started installed an extension that highlights certain text different colors, so I can. It's mainly so I don't miss any lines, because like I record all Stacy's lines, for example, and I've missed one in the middle where it's like she giggles, but it's not in quotation marks.
Sure.
And then I have to go back and record a giggle. It'll sound different to the rest of it, so I have to redo Stacy. It's a whole thing. So,
Do you record your self-reference?
my what?
Or so if when I've done VO work before, they'll always an example I love is they once played me one of the minor mafia characters from The Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
And every time I was about to record a line, just before the take into the cans, I got go suck on a lemon to put me
Amazing.
back into place.
I found I've done that with lines from earlier on in the story. Like
Yeah.
I won't really set one, but whenever I'm reading these stories, because I read a lot more than I narrate, because some people don't reply or they're too long or it's just not. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling it, whatever. But the voice changes in my head as I go. It's like this
Yeah.
one was a British guy until he said something about like having Labor Day weekend off in September, and I'm like, okay, that's American. Clearly, I Googled it to see if it was a thing here. It's not. Well, it's in May or something.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I mean, that aside, like the other stuff about like going to catch rabbits right by the train trestle, this kind of thing, like it definitely gave me the vibe, and it was written in
Also,
American style. I think.
Yeah,
It's a very Native American type monster as well.
that's true.
Interesting.
And like
hadn't-
how I
hadn't
said
actually-
towards the end, it's like, oh, that was 30 years ago now. It's like, okay, so he's suddenly in my head turned older at that point, like whereas he could have been in his teens or 20s or whatever. It's like, well, he's a sort of middle-aged dude. But
Yeah, no, I thought it was brilliant.
oh, thank you.
Well, no more stalling, young Benjamin. You're up.
He always thinks I'm trying to cheat him somehow. He has to twist my arm. What he doesn't know is that I love performing for him.
Aw.
Have you seen my chance cubes?
Right, here we go. A cold wind. I still cannot speak their tongue. My mouth is not fit for it, and their words are lost when I speak. I now realize the edges of my identity were ill-defined before I was brought aboard their ship. It was a loose thing, which held only a vague awareness of my purpose. I did not know I could be held captive. I did not know I could be bound and gagged. I did not know I could be used. The man whose twisted mind dared to do so goes by the name of Captain Morgan Roberts, and I know him all too well. I have watched his legacy of fear grow over the years of my captivity. The dread infamy he aspired to now clings to him tighter than his own shadow. Roberts believed in something stranger than tides, and that belief came to him in the doldrums when he sailed beneath the Jack for Britain. A week stranded, with his sails hanging limp, gave him a canted perspective worthy of a philosopher king. Other men have had similarly strange notions, but few of them are right. He watched as king's men squabbled, mutinied, and ate each other alive, all because the ship would not be moved from the middle of the ocean. Wind, it came to him, was a graspable reality more important than the pursuit of luck to any sailor. His perspective changed irreparably. Roberts emerged from those doldrums incapable of living by the rules of kings or gods. It was not long before he raised the black flag with a crew of others. He took disillusioned men in need of pay and turned them pirate with a wink. He searched at all points of the compass for the control he desired, battling broadside to broadside with the European powers that hungrily traded across the ocean. His men were content with their lot, but the fire of passion still burned in Roberts. It was that man in that state who I first met. His compass having led him finally to the east, he discovered my abode. When his men seized me and dragged me aboard, I felt my eyes see the world for the first time, as a man might see. I saw the spit of rock on which I had lived disappear into the gloom left by the ship's lanterns. They wrapped my naked body, unused to the feeling of cold, in sackcloth and then hoisted me. My mind reeling from this awakening to the mortal realm of needs and sensations, I felt them truss me tight atop a pole at the stern. Before me swam yards of slack grey cloth, limply festooning the mighty triple masts. I cried out in my terror. That was the first time I filled the sails of Captain Roberts. Every foot of cloth snapped taut under my breath, and then lurched as the crew desperately winched the anchor up. In the intervening years, my understanding has grown. The whys, whens, and whats of Dread Morgan's ship have become everything to me. We would come upon the prize ships from any angle, not limited by the vagaries of wind that plague other sailors. Our broadest side would roar with cannon fire against their unprotected flanks from impossible angles. Sometimes the fear of Robert's flag would cause his prey to strike their colours, knowing it was impossible to outrun him. They did not know of the slaughter he intended for them. As my horrified awareness of his deeds grew, so did my reluctance to scream for him. He found increasingly vile methods to force me to act. First it was pain and humiliation. Then, when I became hardened to his torture, he would prey upon my compassion. He would hold innocent children captive and threaten them with pain until I relented. In his actions, I began to see desperation. The ships that we met upon the seas were growing larger, their guns bristling, and rather than our pursuit of them, it began to dawn on me that they were seeking us. We soon saw them travel in groups, and the battles we fought grew more desperate as the powers of empires were brought to bear against our impossible ship. So it was when 3 ships of the line, flying that old and most hated Jack, encircled us, that I finally found an escape. I quietened myself and felt the ship lose momentum to the drag of the waves. Roberts bellowed at me first, but when I would not make a sound, he brought out the boy. That small, bedraggled child stared at me with fear-filled eyes as Dread Morgan pressed a blade against his neck. I saw in those eyes the same fear that had secured my obedience for so long. I saw the countless other innocents that had paid the price for my weakness. With the trap closing in around us, and my silence having marooned him, Dread Morgan Roberts cut the boy's throat. As the child fell, he called for the others, and one by one he ended them in front of me. I met his demands that I fill his sails with a face made impassive by his atrocities. He stared up at me, covered in the blood of children, and began to beg. I remained silent as pirate hunters came abreast of us and opened fire. I watched the deck he had stained with blood splinter and crack with the thudding impact of their cannonballs. As his men tried in vain to fight back, Dread Morgan Roberts was on his knees before me. He begged me to use my voice to fill his sails. He howled that I could not understand him, and that if I did not scream the sails to life, we would all die here. I still cannot speak their tongue, but I understand their words well enough. I kept my silence and watched our end come about.
Crikey.
Damn. I do love me some pirate stories, and that really hit the spot.
Nothing like a bit of pirates, is there?
Yeah, I think I have any pirate stories on my channel yet. People don't tend to write them that often.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Well, yo ho me hearty sounds like a job for you, Ben.
Ooh.
I just wanted to find a reason to say yo ho me hearty. I'm not gonna lie.
I was wondering how many references we were going to get in this next section.
Whoa, no need to be a way anchor about it.
That's
Listen.
incredible.
What was it? What was tied to the? Do we know?
Yeah. So, I think it's the East Wind.
Ah.
Oh, so like a personification of.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
itself.
Like
Oh, that's
some,
cool.
somehow like stolen from an immortal, amorphous life,
Yeah.
and that like that physical thing being stolen and kept aboard a ship.
Interesting.
I know
Uh,
it's years of D&D, but my brain went straight to air elemental. So
Well, that's basically what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, but somehow still they're sort of made human in a way, but still with that kind of ability.
yes.
It just occurred to me that that the when I was working through this, that if one pirate ship or battleship or whatever in the days before, well, when they weren't really using oars or powered engines,
Yeah.
had the ability to create their own wind to fill their sails whenever they wanted,
Mm.
they would have an unimaginable advantage
Oh,
Oh, gotcha.
absolutely.
in any conflict. And it's a big thing, this idea of, because the idea originally came from the doldrums, which is when a ship is just adrift with no wind.
Yes. Yeah.
And it can be awful. As soon as you run out of supplies, you're fucked. Just nothing happening and nothing you can do about it. Like the mentality of it's all so awful. So that's where this character of Roberts emerged from. This man that's been driven mad by a stint in the doldrums, and then he's obviously decided that he wants to try and capture the wind somehow, and succeeded.
Wow.
The excellent read on cold as cold and unfeeling, or at least that's how it came across.
So the coldness that I've gone for here, I don't know whether this did come across properly from what you just said there, was that
Okay.
they have compassion. They're having children used against them for so long. the coldness is in watching them die at the end.
No, that's what I meant. Like,
Right, yeah.
being cold against his threats and his pleas at the end.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going for.
It was bold.
But yeah,
Yeah.
great
I
read.
did like
in a way.
I did like when he stared up at me, covered in the blood of children, and began to beg. That's almost a nice contrast. I don't know. It's,
Yes.
You think someone who's covered in the blood of children would have inspired fear in so many that they're begging for their life. I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah.
Also, there was a lovely moment just after that when he was saying, "I know you can't understand me," because he was so. It felt like he was so sure that everything he'd done would have to work, that it must be that the wind couldn't understand him. That was a really nice little moment. And then the smug, "Oh no, I might not be able to speak their language, but I know well enough what they're bloody saying." That
Exactly.
was really nice.
And it's, as it says at the start, it's the reason that they can't speak the language is because their mouth isn't fit for it. Whenever they speak, they just wind comes out. Which is why he's getting her to like shout and scream his sails clear. There's a bit at the start where I say something along the lines of, "My mouth is not fit for it, and their words are lost when I speak." So that's the idea of like wind snatching away your words. When you're sort of shouting them across a deck.
Yeah. That's very cool.
I had a lot of fun with that one. A bit of a weirder one for me, I would say.
I like that we all ended up on the supernatural.
Yeah.
At least in a sense. It happens a lot, doesn't it? We get to little touchstones, but
I run a horror channel. I have an air of the supernatural about me, I think.
well,
True. Yeah, maybe that was it. So the prompt, a cold wind, was chosen by Tom, and drawn from one of the themes in this story that he's performed. And then Nico and I have done our usual thing where we've gone away and written our own stories to that prompt.
And I must say they were incredible. Well done, guys.
That's really kind of you. Thank you very much.
it's nice, this one.
Yeah, I like this one. Yeah, sometimes
back.
sometimes this can get like, especially when people are opening up about their stories, like we can end up on a road that's very raw.
Okay.
But I think because we've kept it supernatural, possibly it hasn't gone that way. But I've had a really good time listening to these stories. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, horror sort of is my bread and butter, so get most easy.
Just to keep everyone up to date, I did turn the light on and close my curtains because you did me, Tom. And if other people want to be did, and yeah, we're leaving it like that. If other people want to be did by you, where can they find you online? Where's your channel and what's it called?
It's called Sleepless Readings, and conveniently, you can find it at youtube.com/Sleepless Readings.
Brilliant. And are you on any socials at all?
I have a Twitter for the page, which is @StaySleepless, because Sleepless Readings was too long, and Stay Sleepless is my catchphrase at the end of the episodes. So
excellent.
Well, coming from Bookcase Tiny, we can hardly complain.
Yeah, we had to twist it around a little bit.
Damn you, Twitter!
Wonderful. And I guess he's also taking pictures as well. So if you've got a scary story, send it to Tom.
Yeah, always have to read through them.
That'd be cool. It's been fantastic having you on.
It's been my
hearing
pleasure.
you, brilliant, and like hearing you orate your story so beautifully and talk about your project as well, which is such a fascinating project. So I really think that people that listen to this podcast, will really like the everything that you do on your YouTube show. So please do go and check it out.
Well, let me know in the comments where you came from. Sure to say hi.
Excellent.
And I'll be sure to check it out tonight while I'm completely incapable of sleeping. Thanks.
Fight the fire with fire.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter @BookcaseTiny, Facebook @TheTinyBookcase, and Instagram @BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have
Really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?